Hello everybody, I'm GamerDad, and today I'm going to show you how to magnetize the League of Votan land fortress. Now before you get started, you're going to want to do a little bit of work on pre-assembly of this vehicle. I have the finished magnetized vehicle here, but throughout the clips that you're going to see on how to magnetize this, I pre-assembled the main hull, the tires. I did for most of the time leave the top pieces unattached, so I built the roof section and the cockpit, but I didn't glue them to the hull. You're going to want to follow steps 1 and 2, all of the pieces for steps 1 and 2, and you're going to stop just before part 3 begins, where it addresses the different gun types that you can put on the sponsons. So go ahead and pre-assemble, and then we'll jump right on in with magnetizing the sponsons. To start off, you're going to clip out all of the bits that you need to make the 2 sponsons for the right side of the vehicle. So that's going to be the 2 of each of the gun types, as well as the numbered bits for the right side sponsons. There were different numbers for the left side, so I did these separately just to be safe. And right off the bat, we're going to clip off that extra nub on the back of the gun. That's normally how you would insert that into the sponson and glue it. We need to clear it out of the way so we can make room for a magnet. And then we're going to grab our 2mm drill bit and start drilling into the very center of that cleared space to make room for a magnet. Now that that hole is drilled, we're going to go ahead and take our 2mm by 2mm cylinder, and we're going to put it on one of our magnetizers and dry fit it. So you can see that I have, in this case, a 2x2x2 cube stacked with a cylinder. So I was just presetting the orientation for the magnet to kind of know which way things are going to go. So with the orientation of the magnets all set, all I did was switch over to the red side, slide that 2mm magnet on in, and it should sit flush. I did leave both magnets together the whole time just to make sure that I was staying with the proper orientation of the magnets. And these things slide in pretty flush, pretty solid, without much glue. So all I'm going to do at this point is take a little dab of glue, put it on the top, rub my finger across it, and that should seal the deal. Make sure that that magnet stays in forever. Plus, you're not overloading the bit with a ton of glue and caking things on there. If you ever need to uncure later, this makes it a little bit easier to do. All right, so you can see just a little bit of glue being added to where the magnet is set. Take your finger and just rub away that excess. A little bit of the glue gets around the edges of the magnet in the plastic, and it's just enough to help keep that magnet in place. Of course, when you're rubbing away this glue, obviously you're getting glue on your fingers, so make sure you're not handling anything else. You can see every once in a while I'll rub my fingers together, and that's because I'm just trying to rub away or dry that glue on my fingers just to make sure that I can touch other stuff. So just ensuring that I'm not going to stick to everything else. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to put that cube back on the end of the magnet now that all that glue has been kind of brushed away. And we're going to dry fit to the sponson. What I'm doing here is just kind of looking to make sure that we're aligned. That cube does fit straight into that insert very well. I'm ultimately going to come back in and fill this with plastic putty, but for now, just dry fitting, making sure I've got the gun positioned both vertically and horizontally like I need. And then in the same fashion, once I figure out where I want everything, I'll put a little bit of glue on the turret. At this point, I'm just trying to strategically figure out kind of like my point of attack. What I really like doing though is, since these magnets are relatively strong, but they're not too strong, once I line up the magnet, I can very gently slide to make sure that the magnet's still kind of in place and I don't lose its positioning. So as you can see, I'll just figure out where I want it and then slide away. You gotta be very careful. I've been doing this for a little bit of time now, so I'm kind of used to how these magnets will pull on me. What you can do is come in from the backside and put a little bit of glue on the inside of that sponson to make sure that you kind of tack the magnet in place before you pull the turret away or the gun away. But you really want to be careful not to add extra glue to get the magnet stuck together. You also saw that I used that X-Acto knife to make sure that that magnet was sitting flush inside of that insert there. And I'm adding a little bit of glue here like you saw me do with the gun. And then I'm going to kind of rub that away to make sure that the gun surface is not uh, gunky with extra glue. So we'll just rub that away. Rub my fingers together to make sure all that glue's gone. Definitely an important step. And rub that away. If you don't like this approach, there's different ways of putting the glue onto the magnets. This is a little bit messier, but it's easier for me to do this way. Again, you can just insert glue into the rear side to make that a little bit easier. It's going to take a little bit longer to make sure that that glue dries and really adheres. And here you go. The magnet is inserted. You're going to want to repeat this on the other turret as well. So using that one gun with the 2mm cylinder, grab another 2x2x2 cube and do the same thing to the second bit to make sure both of the magnets or both of the sponsons on the right side are good to go. Now we're going to fast forward to the finished assembly of the sponson. So once this is all done, put some plastic putty in the backside, smooth it all out. Of course, make sure that you still have a smooth finish. And then I'm going to show you what it looks like once we've assembled it onto the side of the land fortress. All right, with the side sponsons filled with plastic putty and attached to the side of the land fortress, I did make sure that these sponsons are still movable. It was tough. You got to be very careful. But these are still kind of movable. Now you can see here, I do have some plastic putty put in. Before I closed the sponson, I actually filled in from the inside, and some of this plastic putty kind of pushed through, and then I smoothed it off, like you spreading peanut butter or whatever on the sandwich. I just took my knife and kind of just smoothed across here. Once that cured, it took a little bit of time. Once that cured, I went ahead and scraped away to make sure that this was a flat, smooth surface. And then now you take your bits and they pop right on there. Because I used the magnetizers and I made sure that the correct orientation was in place, all of these weapons will go on any of the 4 turrets. And because this takes so long to do, while these 2 were curing, I went ahead and magnetized all of the guns. I also went ahead and preset these 2. And again, magnets will work on both sides because I made sure that we used the correct polarity, used my magnetizers to ensure everything was in place. So start your plastic putty, then you can go ahead and start drilling all of the guns together to get all 8 of them magnetized, and then you can finish your turrets. Go ahead and pause the video here. Finish getting your turrets set up. You can install them if you'd like to, or you can leave them off. It's entirely up to you. And we're going to go ahead and move on to the next part. We're going to go ahead and look at step 4. And we're going to cover 4B and 4A. So the turret top, either closed or open. We're not going to do it open. Either closed turret top, the 3 different weapon platforms, or even the little sensor that goes in 4B. with the dish. So I have clipped out all of those bits already. I also went ahead and clipped the little side cockpit piece. Might as well, and store it. That's not going to get attached until after we paint anyway. But we clipped it out for good measure. Now, some of these pieces we're not going to magnetize because they're just going to be kind of gravity fed. You could really magnetize if you want, but it's going to be a pain in the butt to take out. Honestly, I wouldn't magnetize any of the pieces for this top port. You got this one big, I guess it's a missile pod. It just hangs, it just floats in there. It just drops in, and I'm shaking this. It's not going anywhere. So when I move the vehicle around, it won't go anywhere. Of course, you turn the top over, and it'll come out, and that's fine. So don't go throwing your tanks around. Also, this piece does the same thing. And then the rocket pods do the same thing. This looks the coolest, but that one takes a little bit of a knock to come out. So they'll fit in there really well. So those 3 weapons don't magnetize. The sensor goes right into that center hole. It's push fit. That's fine. We can go one step further and magnetize it if we really must. And in order to do that, I'll put this on a magnetizer so it's easier to see. In order to do that, I've got 2 magnets here. You can take a 2mm by 2mm cylinder and a 2mm by 1mm disc, and it'll feed right into the hole. So you would just magnetize into that center hole. I'm not going to do that. I don't recommend it. But if you have the extra magnets, you can do a 2x2 and a 2x1. The final piece to discuss is if you don't put any of these pieces down, the easy way to do it, we'll take these back off. The easy way to do it is you can take the turret lid and the turret hinge, clip them out, and dry fit them together. And those will just rest on there. Now, I don't recommend leaving it that way. We're going to glue them. So I really recommend the plastic cement, the liquid plastic cement. We're going to use a very, very, very little bit. Just on the outer edges of the hinge. I don't want any excess to get anywhere else. I will go ahead and put these together and line them up. Okay, so it's all lined up. So now we have the right angle, nice and flush. Take that off, and I'll let that off to the side sit and dry. So now this port, that's step 4. This port is now done. There's really not much work to do. The next piece on step 5, you can also put, this is another reason why I don't recommend magnetizing this. This sensor can also go back here, and it also goes right there. Okay, we're going to take a look at the mounting point for the rear turret, a small little gun that you can put on the land fortress. And if you look in the instructions, we're on step 5. If you look in the instructions, once you've built the full gun, it tells you to take part 80, which is the base of the gun. It tells you not to glue it. So it fits right in here in the rear. And it's designed not to be glued in so the gun turret can rotate. And we're going to use that to our advantage. There is a hole here. It's not perfectly centered to line up with here. So it's not going to be worth your time magnetizing. But you are going to want to go ahead and build the whole gun and then mount it. So we'll go ahead and pause here, build the whole gun, and then we'll take a look at the entire top configuration before we move on to the next step. Okay, and we're back. We've got the rear turret assembled. And it's pretty simple. It's the same. There's no changes to it. The gun belt was kind of a pain in the butt. It looks okay without it, so you can leave it off if you want. But I glued it on. But you just the piece I showed you at the beginning, it just fits right in, and you can rotate it. Believe it or not, the gun actually fits here too. I don't know if it's allowed to go there based on the codex, but according to the build guide, you can put it on the back. So you can put that gun on the back. You can put the sensor on the back. Boom. All right, now that we have the rear turret completed, we're going to get started on the big gun. Before you build it all, you're going to want to start grabbing the first initial pieces for the gun, and that's going to be the gun housing. That's these two parts right here. You're going to want to clip them out. I've not glued them in yet, but I've dry fit. I take 2 pieces of sprue. They're roughly 10-ish millimeters in length. So top to bottom, it's roughly 10 and a half millimeters. So cut out a solid piece of sprue, dry fit it, and I've got it set back a little ways from this little ledge here. And here's why. We're going to take some magnets, and using one of the bits that the guns will attach to, if you just, you're just going to lay it here 2 magnets thick. And we just want to make sure that there's enough space for the magnet to lay on the gun bit and lay on the sprue. So I'm not gluing it. That's about how deep you want to go. You want to dry fit it on both sides. So that's kind of how I line things up. And then when that's done, when you have that lined up, then you can kind of just glue that sprue in, which leaves you with, without knocking the sprue out, that'll leave you with roughly a little flat surface in there where you can lay your magnet down and get things glued. You can even take some green stuff or plastic putty and wrap it around the magnet to let things dry. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. All right, with the magnet attached, as you can see, the sprue in there with the magnet attached, I went ahead and assembled some of the housing, the gun as well. So I just completed that first step where you build the whole housing. I did not put the large armor plates on the side yet. We'll do that in a minute. But I did go ahead and build the main foundation of the turret itself. We will put some green stuff or some plastic putty inside this area so that we can further support the magnet. You're going to want to make sure that you don't put too much and you don't overfill it. You don't want to go past kind of the depth that the magnet is. So we'll fill that in, and what I would suggest next is to build the guns, and we will finish magnetizing the turret. Okay, I went ahead and built the 3 different guns for the turret. As you can see, one of them already has a magnet on the end of it. I did that just to do a little bit of testing. And so it's meant to just line up with the turret and sit on there kind of strong. We'll do the same with the rest. The only problem is, the reason we put these together first is that you can see where your surfaces are. On this plate, there was a big hole, so you weren't able to mount a magnet. When you put the gun together, there's a perfect little mounting spot right here for you to put the magnet, and that will fit on there just right. On this one, you've got a nub sticking in the way. So what we're going to do is we're going to sand this down so that this nub sticking out is smooth with the inside of the surface. We'll let our plastic putty or green stuff finish drying, and then we will put the magnets on. Now, since we have the magnets already aligned for this side of the turret, you already have kind of your magnetizer set up. And so what you're going to do, the easiest thing to do is that, see, and I haven't put the plastic putty in yet. We're going to do that and let it dry. You're going to take, what I like to do on these larger surfaces is you put the magnet on there. You can see I just dropped another one on there. We'll put a little bit of glue on here or on here. And on the opposite side, we will actually put some of the Instaset. So what I typically will do is put the glue on the plastic side, the Instaset on the magnet side, and then when you're done, and this is why we're going to sand down the nub because it doesn't fit. When we're done, they'll set together, and if you let it sit long enough, you pull it apart, and it's set up. So we're going to do that in just a second, but first we're going to put down that plastic putty, and we're going to let it all dry, and we're going to come back and glue one of these magnets on. All right, now that we have our plastic putty dried to further reinforce the magnet, I put those little armor plates on the side as well, so this is done and ready. And you can see the gun fits on there super strong. We're going to go ahead and magnetize the rest. So I went ahead and I shaved down the nub that was sticking out, so this is a flat surface. And this is also a flush and flat surface. And what we need to do is magnetize. And we're going to go ahead and use another 6mm magnet. So these are 6 by 1.5. What I like to do now that we know the polarity, I've got my, whoops, almost threw that off the table. I've got my new magnet now on here. We're going to go ahead and magnetize this one. So here's what we do. Take our glue. We'll put our glue on this side. You don't want to put too much because you don't want the glue to kind of wrap around and get onto the other magnet. Then we're going to take our Instaset. And I've opened the bottle, just take a little bit off the straw and just tap it on the magnet so it gets on there. And then push it together. And you're going to let it sit long enough for all that to cure. And magic. Do the same thing with one more magnet. So we'll just drop that magnet and pop right on. We'll put a little bit of glue on this side. Okay. Put a little bit of Instaset. Push it together and we'll just let that cure. And that is done. Now you can do some things to further reinforce these. If you want to put a little bit more glue in the corners just to kind of let that glue rise up around the sides of the magnet, you can put some liquid green stuff, plastic putty. You're probably going to be okay like this, but you can reinforce further if you want. And what we're going to do from here is finish assembling the whole rest of the kit. We'll get the pilot or the driver, all that into this kit and go from here. And we'll come back and look at the fully magnetized land fortress for you. All right, and here it is, the fully magnetized and finished land fortress. So we still have our rear gun that slides out. I did not glue down the clear pieces yet, but once you assemble everything together, the actual gun turret comes off for safekeeping, but it can rotate around. You put all the accessories on, put the drivers and the little mechanical guys in there, and you're good to go. And now we can just magnetize through. So we've got the first gun. Or we can run any of the weapon variations. Here's number 2. And there's number 3. So we've got all the different possibilities here. And then we can even, if we want, we'll put the little sensor in the back. Now you'll have to consult your codecs into which of these configurations are legal together. I don't know which, if there's a limit to which guns allow me to take which pieces. So there's the sensor on the back, or we put the rear turret back on, we take off the hatch, and the sensor can go here. There you go, there's another option. It's really hard to see with the acrylics and the light glowing, but so we'll leave those bits right there. You know, we had the flat lid on top. We can also have the different missile variations. So you get that one. And then of course, you know, take that out, take the turret out and put the sensor back here instead. Next missile type with either the back turret or the sensor, up to you. And then the rocket pods. I kind of like the rocket pods. I don't know any of the rules. Like I said, consult your codecs as to which configurations are legal together with the rear turret, which of these guns up front, which of these accessories there, and go from there. But you're ready to rock. At this point, now that you've magnetized everything, I would recommend go ahead and take all the don't glue the clear acrylics down yet until you've painted this. But at this point, what I recommend is now would be a good time to glue the top down and the cockpit down, because you don't need those open anymore. Thinking through this, you could probably even just glue it all down at the beginning. I just wasn't sure because I wanted to see what the magnets had. So if you choose to put any magnets on the underside, anything like that, obviously don't glue this top hatch on until you're done. It was easier for me to build and work on this way and just glue it together at the end. So I'm going to glue it all together. We'll get it all painted up, and it'll be on someone's table. So thanks for watching, and hope you enjoyed magnetizing the land fortress.